Right, a whole world of aviation goes past in 2 weeks. We're back to talk about it. Paul Brennan here in Wellington and
Martin Noakes, also in Wellington.
How you doing, Martin?
I'm pretty good, thank you.
Okay, let's launch straight into it. No shortage of news around. On the local front, Air New Zealand announced they're buying a whole bunch more ATR 72-600s.
Yeah, 15 of them.
Wow. For about what, $500 million?
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
Someone was saying that that didn't sort of quite add up given the purchase price each machine. So what, does it come with extra engines and spare part inventory or something?
I couldn't reconcile the number in the press with the number of planes, but there must be something to it, you'd hope.
So Christopher Luxon, the CEO, is saying that they're going to replace the ATR 72-500s, the remaining ones. I think there's 7 or 8 left. They'll get rid of those, replace them with 600s, but they're also getting a few extras. So, what, expansion?
Expansion, yeah. Jetstar competition has obviously sharpened their minds a bit.
So the 68-seaters, they'll probably put them into the markets that Jetstar are seeking to compete against them in. So that'll be Nelson, where else are they going? Napier, those sort of places. They'll be putting those extra seats in. They'll lower the seat prices, and that's the price point competition in full swing, I would imagine.
Well, they're going to end up with 4 extras, and they reckon they're going to replace all the old ones. It's going to give them 600,000 extra seats a year into the market. So, yeah, obviously they're going to be chasing Jetstar down.
And do we know when they're coming?
Late 2016, the first ones will start coming on.
Okay, that's a whole year away.
It is a whole year away. They're going to be operating quite a large fleet of those planes. They're going to have 29 in total.
Oh, okay. I wonder how low they'll go on prices then.
It's going to be interesting. A lot of competition hitting New Zealand this week, isn't there?
And you know what will happen? It's election year, within a year or so of that, and people will be saying, there you go, see, competition, it works. It just took 30 years for it to come back or whatever, you know. Yeah. So thank you, Jetstar.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of Jetstar, Qantas, Oneworld, there's a segue. Big news this week. American Airlines announcing, I think, flights out of Los Angeles starting next year. I think June, July, around there.
July 2016.
Yep. Using what? 787-9s.
Yep.
So American Airlines used to fly here up to, I think, the late 80s. DC-10s were the aircraft that they used to front up at Auckland with. They disappeared. It's funny, some of the reporting's been saying that they went in 2012 and are coming back. Well, that wasn't true at all.
Really bad reporting. Yeah.
Qantas left in 2012. That QF25-26 route used to be 74s, ended up with A330s, and they code shared with a bunch of Oneworld airlines that flight, including American Airlines. So that was a bit of a stretch.
No, the reporting's really bad. So they didn't leave in 2012. Qantas stopped flying in 2012, and AA are code share on basically any Qantas flight.
Through the Oneworld.
And they're also describing this as a new hookup between Qantas and American Airlines. That's simply not true. American Airlines have decided to fly direct to Auckland. Bang. Yeah.
And they have a huge domestic market to draw from in the US, some major hubs spread all through the US, big global network. I'm picking they're going to fill those seats up without any problems.
Well, it's going to be very interesting. So you've got American Airlines flying out of Auckland. You've got lots of regional cities in Australia served by Jetstar. So if you wanted to not go to Sydney, you wanted to go Brisbane, Los Angeles with American Airlines, you might well end up flying through Auckland, and that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing.
No.
Also interesting is that United are going to start flying direct, and they're going to tie in with New Zealand, Air New Zealand, and Virgin, also bringing in people from various Australian regional hubs, bringing them in through Auckland, sending them on their way. So Auckland's...
And going the other way. Because
of course
think of all the
cities
in the US that they're drawing people out of, and they're sending them the other way.
Absolutely. So Auckland's going to get quite busy. And now you've got Air New Zealand flying on to Buenos Aires, finally, well, officially now.
Yeah.
We speculated about that early last year, I believe it was, when it was very first announced.
That's right.
And we think the driver behind that, as was announced in the press, was Singapore Airlines saying they want better connections to South America. Well, there you go. It's Auckland's turning into a bit of a transit hub, which can only be a good thing.
Is that a good thing for Air New Zealand, though? That it's sort of like under attack. If you've got United, they're a partner in Star Alliance. Then you've got Qantas coming through, effectively partner with the American Airlines. Jetstar operating locally in New Zealand, so they can pull someone out of Nelson and put them on an American Airlines flight.
Yep.
sort of to take them anywhere in the world pretty well. 1-2 stops.
I was speaking to a friend of mine who came over here for business from America last week, and he flew American, and he was having to fly back to Sydney to get back to the States. As of next year, he won't have to do that anymore.
Right.
So he'll be very happy.
Okay, so interesting times. But yes, sloppy reporting. Why is aviation always sort of reported in a sloppy, disconnected way? It doesn't take much research to find out these basic facts.
It is surprising because that's a very easy thing to find out. It's going to be good to see them back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And, that's also the 787-900 sort of ranging the Pacific. It's going to be nice.
You think about how things have changed. You go back to that late 90s. If someone was going from New York to Auckland, let's say on American Airlines,
right,
they probably would have done Transcon on a DC-1010 series. Then they would have got on a DC-1030, gone to Hawaii, stopped there, and then taken off and gone to Auckland. If you're the poor sod going to Australia, you got to go through Auckland, and then you get to either Sydney or Melbourne. I think they used to operate like that. Now you're on an A321 in New York, all the way to LA, perfect comfort and quietness, and then you're on a Dreamliner, one stop.
Yeah, one stop.
My, how things have changed.
Yeah.
And the cost of the airline delivering that service relative now to then, with the fuel price as it is, with the technology as it is, would be a quantum cheaper now, wouldn't it, for the airline?
It must be, simply because the number of seats on they're putting on these 787s, there's hardly any seats on them.
Yeah.
So it's going to be easy to fill.
Yeah.
And they've obviously done all their calculations. I mean, they've got like 250 seats on them across the Pacific. It's going to be very good for the consumer. I think we're going to be seeing regular sort of $1,400, $1,500 returns to the States coming up.
Well, now you're seeing Air New Zealand with, I think, an under $500 one-way fare. And if you go on the discount sites, you'll see return on Air New Zealand or United, but it's all the same aircraft, for under $1,000. Seriously, $980, that sort of thing.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
How things change, eh?
All right, so that's of interest. Let's get into this, the big story, and that is, was the Metrojet A321 blown up over the Sinai Desert, or did something else happen?
It appears that it was blown up.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the, not scary things, but one of the, perhaps a pause for thought, is that the Americans, turns out they've got this regional surveillance system that picked up an unexplained flash in the desert. So the Americans quite early on said something else happened to that plane.
Because they have photographic evidence.
They have photographic evidence, real time.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Well, it's interesting, first of all, to know they have that capability, because that detects any launch of any missile or
anything.
And it's not a big explosion, a plane, in the context of the area it's in. So there's obviously some resolution of viewing that they have to be able to see something of that size.
Yeah. And now they've picked up unusual noises in the cockpit voice recorder. And so, the British and now the Russians have done an about face, unusually for them, and also now saying it's a bomb.
Right. So the question is, how do you get the bomb on the aircraft? The shonky security at Sharm el-Sheikh Airport was sort of seen as maybe the origin of the problem. Someone could, working there, inside job, slip a bag in. But now they're talking about maybe something was put in luggage, passengers' luggage in a hotel before anyone even went to the airport.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, that's probably an easier do, isn't it?
Yeah. I'd hesitate to say that the Egyptian authorities are corrupt, but I've just said it.
Yeah. Oh, well, you hesitated to say it.
I did hesitate.
At least you said that.
Yeah. And it turns out that the security practices or the security theatre they were acting out at the airport literally was security theatre, because half the cameras didn't work.
And they had one of those detectors that the British con artist sold.
Yes, the made-up
This
one.
has gone all around.
Yeah.
This must have been a huge, pervasive scam. To remind the listeners, I can't quite remember the detail off my head, but there was a British guy, and maybe a partner involved as well, selling scam bomb detection units, which was sort of like a plastic thing with a button and a sort of pointy thing.
Like one of those electronic fly swatters with a radio aerial stuck to it and a battery.
And there are shots of the official border people at this airport holding these things and waving them over luggage.
Waving them, hopefully.
And people see that and think, well, at least someone's looking after the place.
Well, there is a bit of theatre there, so somebody's looking after it.
So this puts the entire holiday market in North Africa in Islamic countries, especially, in doubt now.
Well,
It has to.
I think
How can you rely on anything?
I mean, they were so distrustful of the processes and procedures at the airport that the evacuees aren't allowed to take any luggage out with them.
Yeah.
So,
Mind you would have to react like that while you don't quite know how it got there. But it says it all, doesn't it?
it does.
So what's the future? If you were the government of Egypt and a government of Morocco or any of those, or Tunisia probably, though they had their attack on the beach recently, it's your worst case scenario.
It's terrible for them because Sharm el Sheikh sort of operated in isolation. It's quite distinct from the rest of Egypt. It was seen as a cheap and quite nice place to go. That's over.
What about the airlines, the leisure airlines, which are associated with leisure travel companies, usually owned by parent companies, bringing back, what was it, Russian numbers, 65,000 tourists. I mean, there are huge numbers, volumes going through these places. What does that do for the airlines if that cuts off?
I'm pretty sure they'll find somewhere else to fly to.
Somewhere safer.
Cheap holidays, chuck them on a plane, get them somewhere else.
Anyway, that's a very horrible thing. There was talk that the aircraft had been damaged at some point in a landing incident. I think it was Irish registered, so you'd expect that that's first world, isn't it?
Yeah, and they have to look at everything. It had suffered a heavy landing. There were some doubts as to how well it had been repaired. There was those reports and images of fluid leaking out of the rudder post back there.
Yeah.
But it turns out that no, there was an explosion on board, and that was it.
224 on board, I think, was the total. Yeah. And in the leisure configuration, the A321 really squeezes it in, doesn't it?
Packing them in, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're obviously a popular plane because I see that Vietjet in Vietnam just ordered another 30.
Crikey.
321s.
And that will take the production to over 50 a month. It would have to, wouldn't it?
Well, they're thinking of upping the family production rate up to 60, I think, next year. 60 a month.
The resources you need to maintain that level of output.
Yeah.
That's a big operation.
Yeah.
And then if it ever contracts, you'd have to wind it all down then, wouldn't you?
They take about a month off over summer, so it's 60 times 11, so it's 660 planes a year they're going to be producing soon of the A320 series.
Incredible demand.
That is just amazing. And they've got a backlog of, 3,000 or 4,000.
Yeah. Oh, well, if you're working on the A320 line, you feel quite secure in your job at this point.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, and speaking of airlines, I see Cathay. You've seen their new livery there?
Yes.
What do you think of that?
Yeah,
it's not much of a difference, really. It's a tweak, isn't it?
It's a tweak. There you go. It's a tweak. Yeah. Version 1.1 or whatever version it is.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, Cathay are interesting because we've been talking about Cathay a bit, and what planes are they going to order? There's all this talk. Leahy of Airbus fame.
Yep.
He's famous for talking things up, salesman.
He sure is.
That's what he has to do.
Yeah.
He says there's upcoming 30 orders for A380s, but he's saying they might not come this year, but they're in deep negotiation. So we've been thinking...
And he said they're not a lease company.
And they're not a lease company. So we've been speculating.
Yep.
Who could this be? Now, the rumours are saying it's Saudia and Royal Air Maroc. And we're like, really? Royal Air Maroc and Saudia?
In the past, they have bought like 747-400s and, quite big aircraft, Royal
but
Maroc.
They don't fly very far.
It doesn't make... that's right.
It doesn't make a huge amount of sense. There's some sort of second-level speculation that it might be Turkey, because Turkey are world-ranging now, Turkish Airlines.
That's a reasonable...
It's reasonable, and they're severely slot-restricted even at their new airport, so that would make sense. But we keep coming back to Cathay, don't we? And Cathay said a number of times categorically, and we know how this works, that they're not going to buy A380s. But we don't think they can avoid buying A380s because, as both the head of Singapore Airlines and the head of Emirates has said, if customers have a choice, and both of those airlines are flying mixed fleets to the same destination of 777s and A380s, they're finding that customers are willing to wait a couple of hours and spend a couple of $100 more to fly on the A380. And I don't think Cathay can afford to lose that business. It
must wear away at you at some point.
It has to.
Also, look at the other drivers. They are in the part of the world that has a huge population.
Yep.
Their competitor carriers on long haul around them all operate pretty well now, A380s.
Well, their main competitors...
And they've got Lufthansa coming into Hong Kong with A380s.
Exactly.
China Southern, I think, goes in with A380s.
Yep.
I think Thai or Malaysia quite often.
Yeah.
You're under attack.
On the Kangaroo route, they're competing with Qantas. There's all these rumours, and again, the rumours, pure speculation, that BA is going to start serving Australia with an A380, Singapore Airlines, Emirates. It's very interesting. And then, of course, another airline we come back to, which is also always categorically denying they're ever interested in the A380, is why wouldn't United have a fleet of 10 or 15 of these things?
You'd think.
Across the Pacific,
Yeah.
would be the way to go.
You can't grow your market if you're slot restricted, flying planes that you're already tapped out on capacity.
Absolutely.
And also, the other thing that A380 does, it allows you to have a multitude of products in one plane.
Yeah.
So if you decide to have a new product in a 777 that's already maxed out, you can't put it in, or you have to change the whole concept of the thing. This A380, well, sweet, this part will just make premium economy, and it's got 60 premium economy seats in it, which magically appear, you know?
Yeah. And look at Emirates now. They've just taken delivery of their 70th, and
I
that's
know.
in a high density configuration. I think it's 47 business class seats, no first class, and the rest is economy for a total capacity of 615 seats, every one of which has more room than in your 777.
Yeah, so if you're an airline of Cathay scale and history, there's no way. It does make sense to sit back and take that.
It looks unavoidable.
Yeah. And for United as well. I mean, what it's breaking down to is it's United and American, isn't it, in the end?
Yeah.
That will become a dogfight, won't it?
It will. I would never see American Airlines ordering it. That's not going to happen. But United is remarkably nimble when it comes to changing its mind.
They've always had big operations between the US and Japan.
Yes.
Also, US-China's going to be big. Again, it's how many people in a market with so many people can you get into your plane?
Yeah.
You never know. American are flying Airbus now.
Yes. No,
And they've got lots of A330s, so they're right up on it.
It's going to be very interesting because 30 is quite a big order, and I don't see it being Saudi and Royal Air Morocco because Saudi is very, very cyclical. It's
unless the Saudi
tourism.
royal family really feel that they need something from Europe.
What, one each?
Or the European Union, they need favours. They need to stay good with them. Diplomatic issues abound,
I'm pretty sure in the next 2 or 3 months we'll find out more about that. And of course, Leahy's famous for his last-minute surprises, so maybe some of these will be announced at the Dubai show, which is, I think, ending right now.
Yeah. Speaking of Dubai, did you see that clip of the A380 with the two jetpack guys flying around?
That was amazing, wasn't
Crikey.
it? That was amazing.
Again, you've got to hand it to them. They do sort of out-of-the-box things to get attention. And I noticed I watched that the few days that came out, and the viewing numbers on the YouTube link just went through the roof in a couple of days. It was like 20,000. Next day it was like 700,000. I think it got well over maybe 1.5 million just in that week. But you see all the flap hanging out of the A380 going as slow as they possibly
Apparently
could.
the top speed of those jetpacks is 170 knots, so they had to film it below that. So they were probably tooling along at, 150?
Yeah.
Remarkably controlled, those jetpacks, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
Special forces have got to be using them.
What's the endurance? Half an hour? 40 minutes? Something like that?
No,
fuel
flat
wise?
out it's 10 minutes, but 10 minutes is going to get you 50 Ks from the point where you've dropped off.
That's right. Then you pop your parachute. And
Yeah.
Great idea.
Be hard to see as well.
Imagine flying in formation, though, with something as big as the A380.
Well, I at one point I thought one of the guys was going to reach out and try and touch the winglet.
Ooh, yeah. You'd have to be careful of the vortex off the wing.
I
You
think
could
that's what
spin
they
you crazy if you...
That's what they were all worried about, yeah. Another interesting thing is, will Airbus announce the A380 Neo? I don't think they will, but I think they will announce a refresh.
Okay.
And that might include different winglets and performance-improved engines.
Right.
And Emirates will make another order.
Okay, so plenty happening in the news department of aviation last 2 weeks. Before we get on to talking about the aircraft of the week, which hasn't even been, invented yet, let's talk about the Vulcan again. Another development, Martin, in the ongoing saga of the wash-up of the Vulcan.
Yeah, the British authorities are investigating the rumoured double barrel roll that the Vulcan performed on its last flight over Grantham in the UK.
So that is illegal, is it, or something?
Well, yes. It wasn't within their remit to do barrel rolls.
Yeah.
And there's a very sketchy video up on the BBC site showing a Vulcan performing what appears to be a barrel roll. However, it could be stitched together from a whole lot of stills. The video is not a true video.
It's a sequence of stills, right?
Of
but
stills.
I got to say,
It looks real.
if it is doctored, it's been done very well.
Yes.
Taking that into account, it looks like it probably
There's
did
also
happen. People would have witnessed it, though, surely.
Exactly. So it looks real, and it's pretty cool if they did do it.
Reminds me of, remember old Tex
Oh, yeah.
Johnson?
The Dash 80.
The Dash A707 prototype. He barrel-rolled it in front of a whole bunch of airline executives and some sort of trade show that was going on downtown Seattle.
Yeah.
It's on film. You'll see it online if you go find it. Apparently got into a bit of trouble. But if you've seen a picture of Tex and read a bit about him, he was a real maverick guy. He had one of those drawly sort of accents like that.
And in terms
a cigar hanging out, and he wore a leather hat, a cowboy hat, whenever he went
It's a no-stress manoeuvre if you keep 1G on it the whole way around. So
correct.
There's no danger. There's also one of our listeners wrote in and put me onto about an hour-long documentary that's up on YouTube now, which documents the last flight of the Vulcan.
Oh, okay.
And he also wrote and told me something interesting, that the chief pilot of the whole Vulcan thing, he only had his PPL. Yeah, he had been certified to a high level. Yeah. But he couldn't keep up that certification, so he just maintained his a 4-engined PPL.
Wow! Well, and checked out on a Vulcan.
Yeah, and flew the Vulcan around.
Oh,
so how cool is that?
All right, so that'll be a one of those sort of iconic last stand stories that'll go into history. Like, remember when they barrel rolled the Vulcan on the last flight? That'll go down in history. All right, so let's go to our aircraft of the day, which is an aircraft that hasn't been invented yet, but people are talking about. Looks like, I'd say, within about 20 years, Martin, people will be flying on an aircraft like this around the world.
Or goods will be flying into space on it.
Yeah. We'll be travelling from, London to Sydney in 4 hours or whatever, and add another 15 minutes to get to here. Where do we start with explaining this? Do we explain the aircraft or the engine that makes it work?
Well, I think we start with something that people might remember from way back. It was called the HOTOL. It was horizontal takeoff and landing, which is not a very good name, but it was a British design that was, I think it was in the 70s even, or the 80s, of an air-breathing engine which got you up to 26 kilometers high, at which point the engine turned into a rocket engine and then shot you off into space.
Okay.
Now, subsequently, that's been refined and become the Skylon, which is the latest iteration of basically the same
Sounds very
principle.
James Bondy.
But the key to this is they've done a lot of work on developing the engine, which is called the Sabre engine.
Yeah.
And so what they've invented is this incredibly efficient heat exchanger. The way the engine works is it runs on liquid hydrogen and oxygen. During the first stage, it extracts the oxygen from the air, just like a traditional jet engine. It is essentially a traditional jet engine.
Right.
So it takes off and flies off. Then it starts accelerating, really accelerating. And it gets up to ideally around Mach 5.
Right.
Now, at Mach 5, the air entering the jet, due to compression and everything's really, really hot.
Yeah.
And you can't actually burn it in a jet engine.
Hundreds of degrees.
Yeah, really hot. So you've got to cool it down. So what reaction engines have come up with is they've come up with a closed-cycle cooler which uses the liquid hydrogen fuel to pre-cool helium. They have a closed-cycle cooler with liquid helium in it. They maintain or extract some of the energy out of the liquid hydrogen to keep the helium ultra cool. The helium is then in a sort of a reverse boiler thing at the front of the engine. This hot air enters the engine, gets put through this heat exchanger, which is cooled with liquid helium, thereby cooling the air down. And it's masses and masses of air a second.
Yes.
Thousands of kilograms of air a second is cooled 300 or 400 degrees, is sucked out of it almost instantly to the point where it can be burned in the engine. So the plane is now flying along at 20,000 meters, going on up to 26,000 meters on this engine.
Yeah.
At which point it's reached a ballistic profile at that point. They shut off the front of the engine, continue to burn liquid hydrogen while introducing an onboard oxidizer, liquid oxygen, to boost it up into space.
Wow.
And another of the advantages of the design is they reckon on re-entry, due to something I don't understand an awful lot about, it's called ballistic coefficient, it won't get as hot as, for example, the space shuttle. It'll come in slower.
Not like the old days of 5,000 degree plasma flying past the window from the heat shield, which is slowly melting. It's more of a controlled flight back in.
It's slower and less energetic, so it's the temperatures are lower, and you can use alloys. You don't have to have...
And you'll probably survive.
You don't have to tile it.
Yeah. It was hugely expensive.
And then they have the option, I guess, of starting the engine once they get lower and going to a controlled landing at an airport of their choice, or they can glide it in and land it similar to the space shuttle.
Okay, so I wonder how far out into orbit. Low Earth orbit's what, 150k, something like that?
But I mean, once you're up there, the sky's the limit. If you've got
Yeah.
an extra boost, you can then take yourself somewhere else.
Gee.
Yes, and the British government is now backing this.
Yeah, I see
It's
the
been a long time
military's taken a share.
Yeah.
Is that a commercial arrangement, or do they want some proprietary ownership over the engine technology for their own purposes?
coming. Well, I'm pretty sure most people would like a simple and cheaper way to get into orbit.
Right. Yeah, well, there you go.
Satellites.
I wonder what the time frame on that is. If the military are investing already, they'll want to see something operating at some point, won't they?
Well, they've got a proof of concept of the cooler, which appears to work, and now they're building up a proof of concept engine, which they will then fly probably within the next 5 years, I
So
expect.
imagine in 20 or 30 years you say, okay, I got a function in London tonight.
Yeah.
It would be possible to think
I
that way.
actually think, I don't think that'll change much. I think the surprising thing will be, I've just ordered a iPhone cover
right.
in Hong Kong.
It's on the
and,
way, yeah.
And Amazon will have it
Yeah,
here
yeah.
in 30
Yeah,
minutes.
in the same day.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything on FedEx is same day.
Amazon Prime.
But being able to travel around the globe at those speeds, that's going to change the world.
Well, they're talking of 15,000 kilograms payload or 24 passengers.
And that's the early thinking.
That's kind of what their concept vehicles are saying. So, yeah, you'd get anywhere in the world probably in 4 hours. So you get to Sydney and then spend 4 hours getting from the airport into CBD.
Right. What you need is a hover car,
Yeah.
self-drive, to then transport you.
Get you
But
the-
that will happen as well.
Get you the rest of the way.
In fact, it'll be interesting to see when everything becomes self-drive, and that's going to happen probably before this plane, how much faster traffic will flow.
Well, it's that Tesla that they've put the upgrade on, which everyone got over the air, which is the sort of the autopilot, which is only meant to be used on freeways now.
Yeah.
It's already been credited with saving 2 accidents. One when a guy came the wrong way down the freeway and the Tesla avoided it and stopped.
There you go. Oh,
Yeah.
you won't need to think about anything.
No, well, do we anyway? I don't know.
I don't know. Well, yeah, you'll be thinking about what burger will I have,
Yeah, yeah.
and it will show up with
Yeah,
a drone.
You order it as you're driving along.
I see there was a pizza company doing fireworks with their pizzas around Guy Fawkes. You could order fireworks with the pizzas. you
Oh,
know.
yeah?
So you don't even need to go to the shop and get them.
No.
You just sit at home and scoff your pizza
What
and
they-
stay in the same chair.
But what they need is indoor fireworks for those people, so
Yeah.
they don't even have to get off the couch.
No, it's all 4K on
Yeah,
the screen.
yeah, yeah.
With surround
A
sound.
firework clip.
We're out of time again. Good to talk again on aviation back in 2 weeks. Paul Brennan here in Wellington.
Martin Noakes in Wellington.
See you around.
Cheers.